I think people confuse pretty with good cinematography. What was it Freddie Francis says? There was good cinematography and bad cinematography, and then there's the cinematography that's right for the movie. And I often feel that if reviewers don't mention your work, it's probably better than if they do. It means it actually works because the film is a piece.
For various reasons, we couldn't shoot in black and white. So we experimented in different ways to desaturate the color. And so the lab in London kind of developed this process that was what they call bleach bypass process on the print, which leaves in the silver that's used in the development process is left in the print, and that made it a semi-black and white image. Yeah, I think it was the first major film that used that kind of technique, other than Keizo Miyagawa in Japan, who had used it a few times late in his career.
Now, Kon Ichigawa did two of my favourite movies, Fires on the Plain, and he did another film called Burmese Harp, both set in the World War II. Well
He's
done.
Happy.
And then he made Tokyo Olympiad, which is one of the best documentaries about sport ever made, I think. I love doing prep. I love what we do, which we spend a lot of time just mulling over the script and thinking about it in visual terms, and then storyboarding, especially key scenes, sort of the border battle and things like that. You really have to storyboard quite precisely, otherwise you haven't got a chance of shooting it on a schedule like we had. For all the prep you do, I think you've got to be open to what happens on the day. The scene with Kate going on the roof and seeing the gunfire and Juarez and stuff. We got this kind of amazing sky. When we saw it, we deliberately went and shot it. You know what I mean? And you've just got to be open to the way things are. I think is a danger in doing, being too rigid in terms of shooting what you prep, and a danger in being too fluid and not doing enough prep. In the complexity and the sort of stress of shooting, it's sometimes hard to kind of come up with those things on the day. I mean, everybody does have ideas on the day, and things change, but I think it's really important that you have that prep period, and that's why I say I love sitting with the director and just talking about the script without the pressure of actually having to shoot that day or do anything. You just sit in the office and drink endless cups of tea or coffee and just go through the script and just throw out ideas. I think that's one of the key creative processes myself. But, yeah.
Well, I've got a very strong feeling about lenses, and personally I'm sitting here talking to you, and you're filming me from over there on a shoulder on probably a single, where I'd rarely do that, because I think, the camera wants to be, to me, I would shoot singles inside here, unless it's for a particular effect, and then I'd drop back off and be more observational with a shoulder in. I mean, I think it's a totally different effect to an audience looking at somebody on the end of a 100mm lens, as opposed to somebody that's being shot on a 27 close to, or 21. So here we are, 32mm or 30mm. It's on a zoom, so sometimes you can't tell what the millimeter is. Anyway, but it's different, right? It's a sense of presence. You're right there with somebody as opposed to being... I think psychologically it's a totally different effect. So, I mean, it's just the same as your relationship in real life to somebody. I'm sitting this close to you. I'm not seeing you from over there on a long lens, So I don't think we take that into account as much as we should, really.
Circle Rouge.
Ah, yes.
But there's an early film he did, Silence de la Mer, also shot by Henri Decaille. Very, very moving. It's one of the best war films ever made, that all takes place in the front room of a little cottage in France.
Yeah.
It's very interesting when we were talking to the photographer Alex Webb, who is now photographing Brooklyn, where he's lived for a very long time. But he said until he photographed other places abroad, Mexico and Cuba and places, he didn't feel he could photograph his backyard. And I find that really interesting, because if you look at the kind of directors and cinematographers that have portrayed America, a number of the best, most revealing portraits have been done by outsiders, obviously Wim Wenders and
Robbie Mueller, Paris, Texas, is the classic example of a picture of America that is the same America we all see, but somehow it does a different take on it. So anyway, but you know, we did a lot of prep with it, that was the thing, and worked out exactly what we wanted with it. I mean, I still use a meter, I still light through the camera. An advantage is now I have a DIT on set with a calibrated monitor, so I can see exactly what the image is rather than guessing, but I was pretty good at guessing really by the time digital came along. Intensify the moment with a camera movement, but not make it too ostentatious, if you like, you know? I think it was a balance, because you know, we didn't want to do anything where you're just behind the characters following them all the time, which, you know, scarily that's what maybe your first thought of the story is, that, okay, I'm following these two guys and we're just following them behind or in front, and that's it. I had to find ways of making it much more descriptive.
Yeah, I mean, most of the films, I suppose, most of the films I do are very quite naturalistic, and that fuels that. You know, like Assassination of Jesse James. I mean, I didn't want a scene that's lit by an oil lamp, you know, but then have a light on the face that you go, where's that coming from? You know, I wanted the thing to feel very authentic. So, yeah, and that was, you know, shot on film, so you couldn't really shoot that much with a little flame and an oil lamp. So you have to find ways of dummying that effect as though it, you know, still looks like an oil lamp that's lighting the scene, you know. You know, in the old days, people would have a lamp on a stick and they pan it with a character as they were walking around and carrying a lamp and all that. And I mean, I admire all that stuff. It's fantastic, and I did a bit of that myself on a job or two early on. But it ends up, it still doesn't look authentic, and I think it takes you out of the moment and the feeling of authenticity. So, yeah, I'm constantly obsessed about how to make things look as real as possible, I suppose. And you're always learning, every film you learn. But it's pretty scary. You come up with an idea and you've never done it before, and you really right deep down, you don't know if it's going to work. You just think this will probably work, but, you know. It's real movies. You know, if I could describe what I love about this movie, then I'd write a book. But you can't describe it because it's a movie. A movie can do something that no other medium can do. And when it works, it really works. And when it really works, it's called La Ventura. I have an overall kind of approach to cinematography, then it should be as simple and as submissive to the script as possible, really. Because I think so much is about the relationship with the camera and the actors. And obviously the original Blade Runner is such a, you know, iconic movie, isn't it? I mean, the original was wonderfully shot, but to me the most powerful thing about the original film is the death of what's the actor's name?
Rutger Hauer.
Rutger Hauer's death in the rain with the white pigeon, and then you watch the documentary about the making of it and realise that was all something that was kind of created on the day, and the dialogue was rewritten. And to me, that is what the film is about. That moment, you know. The danger with lighting is that you light something to look attractive when it might not necessarily be right for the shot or the moment in the film. You know, I think lighting, yeah, you can enhance the storytelling with lighting, or you can destroy it as well, actually. It can be very distracting if you're not careful. I guess, again, maybe it's my documentary background, but no, just my sensibility is one of naturalism. And I don't like an audience to be aware of lighting, you know. And sometimes the lighting can be quite fanciful, like maybe it was in Blade Runner, but I always try and put it in a context that is believable, you know, that the audience feels that this is a real world that they're in, not something that is just there because it looks attractive or, you know, it's clever. You know what I mean?
Because I know actually you can make a film without any lights, without anybody, you know, just with a camera. If you had to, you just have to be careful. Choose your light and choose your moment and choose the angle. It's really interesting. Solaris was made just a little bit later than Kubrick's 2001. And Tarkovsky said he could never do 2001 but he wanted to do a film that was more emotionally engaged with you. He felt Kubrick's film was rather cold and a piece of wonderful technology, but had little to engage you with emotionally. And personally, I think he's absolutely right. I think his Solaris is the best science fiction film probably ever made, and the most profound.
I don't want to be distracted by the lighting when I'm actually filming the actors. I want it to be about the camera and the camera's relationship to the characters, and not about, oh, I need to move that light or something. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's why I operate. I love being there. I'm the closest person to the actors, really. I kind of love that, you know. And I mean, I think a huge part of a cinematographer's job is create a space for an actor to do their work in. Because if you haven't got that performance, you haven't got a film. If the audience don't believe the character and the acting, it doesn't matter how nice the lighting or pretty the shots are. It's a bust. It's about that character. So the cinematographer's job is to create that space, that comfort zone for the actors to do their work, isn't it? Yes. You know, really.
Anybody wants to watch one movie for cinematography, to understand what cinematography is, it would be In Cold Blood, really.
Yeah.
For me, it's actually sitting with a director and going through the script and then sort of like figuring, you know, just discussing it, sometimes saying, well, we can do this with an image, we don't need that dialogue, you know. Simple things like, how do you want to introduce a character to an audience? You know, do you want to start straight away, or do you want to gradually reveal that character? Do you want to do that with a location? Do you want to kind of always start with a wide shot of the location so the audience knows exactly where they are, and then you go into the scene? Or do you want to start really tight in an abstract way, and then gradually the audience realizes they're in this place they'd never imagined?
You know, I love images and telling stories with images, and how you move the camera and framing. What difference does you move the camera that way, that little bit, what difference does that make to the effect it has on an audience? A light's here or it's a light here. What do those differences, how do they affect the scene and the audience's perception of the story and their immersion in that story? That's what's interesting, not whether it's 8mm, 70mm, Alexa, red camera, iPhone. I don't really care, you know. Sometimes I see cameras doing these amazingly elaborate things. I think, well, why? You know, and I go back to Antonioni or Jean-Pierre Melville, when the camera moves, there's a really deliberate point to what it's trying to say to the audience by making that move or creating that composition. And I think we tend to forget how powerful imagery can be in that way, you know.
The difference between, in a way, naturalism and realism. I mean, you go out on a moonlit night, that's not what you imagine it looks like. If you really study it, that's not what the audience necessarily expects to see in a film, or that's not necessarily what you actually want to show them, because you want to concentrate on a certain aspect and you want to, you know, create a certain mood. So, and the thing is with lighting, you're not always trying to completely represent reality. In fact, often far from it. But for me anyway, I want to create a reality.
Yeah.
I want to put the audience in a world that they believe, that appears like it behaves the way the real world does to their eyes. The light behaves the way it does in the real world. It's not something that suddenly that jumps out. There's suddenly two shadows from one sun, or you know, or there's multitude of color lights with no justification. I don't like that sort of world. I like to create a world that the audience can be immersed in and can believe it. But it's not necessarily the world that I see out here now. You know, that's the difference. And that's especially, I think, applies to night shooting, and it's very hard to recreate exactly what night looks like, because your eyes behave so differently in low light levels. You know, so it's a very interesting issue, really. What is real, and what is the way you want to create for the audience? What do you want to create for the audience? You know, I think it's a mistake in that sense to try and create something that's ultra realistic, or ultra naturalistic to the world we actually see at night. I think you create your own version of it, really, how you interpret it.
Stick to your own ideas and your own, you know, like I said before, develop your own way of seeing, basically. Don't try to copy somebody else. It's not interesting. I want to see how somebody else sees the world. I don't want to see a reflection of the way I see the world. That's pointless, you know what I mean? We're all different, so everybody's got a different way of seeing, and everybody is interested in different things, you know, so I think that's my advice.